Love and life is really all about sacrifice. There's no way around it. It's evident, it's embedded in the very fabric of life. Sacrifice. Give up something for someone else. Self-sacrifice would be even more true than just general. To share. To give someone who has less when you have more, which means you would have less. Two people in the woods, you have a piece of bread, you give him half, or all of it. Think about parents. You give of yourself to procreate. You literally give. If you're a man, you give your energy, your DNA. If you're a woman, you give 9 months of yourself. Whatever you eat, you share with that fetus, only to then give birth to it, give it milk, and then provide for it. You cook for it, you nurture it, you clothe it. It's a sacrifice. Because you could have used those resources for yourself, yet you do it for the child. Where does it all come from? Well, obviously it comes from God. Because the Lord in his very essence is about love. That is who he is, and love is self-sacrificial. Selfless, meaning it sacrifices itself for the object of its affection. Think of the amoeba. You got one cell, it has everything it needs, but then it takes half of its resources and pushes it over to another being to give it life. Think about that for a moment. What is duplication? It's no longer a part of me, I've given it away for you. Is that not what the Lord did when he made us? He had everything in himself, for himself, to himself, and yet he said, I'm going to give a portion of me and make you. Think about that for a moment. He gave his spirit for us. His time, his mind, not to mention his emotions, his very breath, to create us. Why? Because love. Because that is what he is. Love. And with love comes self-sacrifice. Well, because if you want something, you're going to have to sacrifice to give it. It's going to cost you something. It's like the law of thermodynamics I just talked about. Energy cannot be created or destroyed. If you create something, you got to take from something else. If you're going to give a gift, it's going to cost you whatever, money, resources, time, effort. The Lord did not just create out of thin air. He created from himself. He invested his resources into making us. You don't think about that, do you? It cost. And not only cost to create, but cost to redeem. Because he is that great that not only he made us, he also redeemed us, paid even further to protect his investment because of his love. Like, I made you, you fell in sin, well, you're gonna die. I don't want to lose my investment. I tell you what, I'm gonna bail you out. He didn't have to do that, but he did. He did. Yeshua said that no love has no one greater than this, meaning no greater love than this, to lay down one's life for a friend. What is the acme of love, the pinnacle of love? to lay down your life because that is the greatest thing you have? Your very life, you give it away for someone that you love, for a friend. What bigger thing you have in your own life? Sure, you can give money, time, all of that stuff, attention, but your life is everything you got, really. And that is what he gave. Came to this world, he was born, did his ministry, and then he gave down his life because of love. Didn't have to do that. Didn't have to die that horrible death, suffer. We have no idea what he suffered and what it cost him. No idea. Too much for us to bear, yet he was willing. Because of love. He is love. That is who God is. And how blessed are we? If he wasn't, we wouldn't be. We would be dead if we ever even were created. Think about it, so many of you, especially children, you typically see that in children. Mine, 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 mine. Share with your brother. No. You want all the chocolate, all the candy, all the cake. You don't want to share. Why share? If I share, I have less. And you can see that the more godly you become, the more sacrificial you are. You don't just give out of your abundance, you give out of your lack. Yeshua gave the most fantastic, phenomenal example when he was in the temple courts watching the people give their tithes and offerings. All these people dropping in thousands of dollars, giving up stacks of cash, metaphorically speaking. Sure, they gave the amount, but it didn't cost them anything really. They didn't have to give up anything. It's not like they had to downsize or, not be so extravagant no, it didn't cost them. It was out of their surplus. Well, if you're a millionaire, you got some money to spare. But the poor widow that gave the widow's mite a couple of pennies, she's a poor widow, widows back then. There was no social welfare, there was no social security, no food stamps. It's all she had. And she gave all she had. She's a poor widow. And yet she gave what she had, not out of her abundance. She's like, I got some extra money this month. No, she gave everything, knowing that she doesn't have anything else. She doesn't have anything more for herself, but yet she gave. That's the sacrifice. How is that a sacrifice if you give something you don't need? Well, I did my budget this month. After all my expenses, I have 200 left over, so I'm gonna give it to you. Well, so you've given me nothing. Now, listen, not to dismiss that. We still need money. We live in a physical, practical world. But as far as God is concerned, you've given him nothing. You've given us something, but you've given him nothing. Because he's not looking at the amount, he's looking at the heart and the intent of the gift. Remember the parable that Nathan the prophet gave David after he slept with Bathsheba? The man who had all these lambs, etc. And then he was rich and he had a visitor and he didn't want to slaughter any of his lambs, so he took the lamb of the poor man who only had one. David was outraged. Justifiably so. You have all of these resources and yet you're unwilling to give anything that belongs to you. You're not willing to make the sacrifice. You'd rather take from someone else and sacrifice him for you. That's not what the Lord did. He didn't ask the devil to make a sacrifice for us. He sent himself. Yeshua is the Word of God. He comes from the Father. He said, I and the Father are one. It's not a different, separate entity. We talked about the Industrial Revolution some time ago, all the magnates, Carnegie, Rockefeller, all of those guys. See, their philosophy was the exact opposite. Not only they didn't give and sacrificed for other people, they sacrificed other people for themselves, which is really what slavery is. How did they build their wealth? Not by being benevolent and altruistic, no. By paying pennies on the dollar. Cheap labor. taking advantage of poor people while amassing their wealth. Basically, you're only rich because you're making the salary of the 1,000 people you employ and do not pay, which is what they did to the transatlantic slave trade with the Africans. How did they build their wealth? Well, if you got 1,000 people working for you and none of them get their share, that means you get 1,000 shares and you get wealthy. You got the wealth of 1,000 men in you. They sacrificed, not voluntarily. It's not like they offered up. They said, hey guys, we love our boss, let's all pitch together and give him everything. No, they were forced. And later all these billionaires become altruistic, donating. You've given nothing. Now that you're old, now that you've had all of your fun playing golf, retiring in Scotland, doing everything you wanted, and now you're like, I'm gonna die in a minute. I'll give and do some nice things. You think you've given something? You devils? After robbing all of these poor people, God knows how many people died in those factories, working in those horrible conditions, 7 days a week, 12 hours a day, making pennies, without proper protection, proper healthcare. So many accidents that happened, people dying in the protests, trying to fight for their living. It's demonic, it's evil. If you want to give to God, give something that costs you. When David wanted to build the temple, he came to, forget his name, he was a Jebusite in Yerushalayim. And he said, this is where I'm going to build the temple. And the man said, oh, here, take whatever you need. David said, no. No, I'm going to pay you the full amount. I will not give anything to the Lord that does not cost me. Abraham said the same thing, did he not? When he bought the cave for his wife. Oh, take it. No, I'm going to pay you the full price. I'm not taking no free stuff. No, it cheapens the giving. How can you give something that does not cost you? Which is another way of getting to all of you who give as a tax write-off. You devils. If you give to all of these organizations, right, non-profits, and then you write what you've given as a tax write-off because you've given to non-profits and you get reimbursed in your taxes, have you really given anything? No. You know who gave? The IRS. They've given. The IRS gave money, not you. Because you just wrote it off as a write-off, meaning an expense and deduction. So you've given God nothing. You're a liar and a cheater and a deceiver and a devil. Don't you dare give God something that does not cost you. See, I remember when I came to the US, did my taxes for the first couple of times, and I was like, wait, it doesn't seem right. Why would I write a deduction for the money I've given to charities? It's like, well, if I've given it to charity, surely I'm not supposed to get it. It just made sense to me that this was not legit. But not to everyone else. Oh no, they take advantage to the fuller degree. They're like, oh man, when you give the goodwill, just write the value of the item, $600, and you can write it off in your taxes. But I haven't given $600, and if I would have given $600, and my purpose was to give and to sacrifice, why would I write it off on my tax deductions? It doesn't make sense. Then it doesn't cost me anything. So you tell me I can give to God and not give him anything? Yeah, man, that's exactly what I'm saying. Well, there you go. That's most of you people. You give God last instead of first. You give the government first, you give the taxes first, you give to your bills, to your phone bill, you give to your online whatever, you give to your hobbies and your habits. You put aside money for your colleges, you put aside money for your drinking, for your leisure, for your travels. But you don't put aside money for God right off the top. 10% is the tithe. That's like the mandatory thing to acknowledge that it all belongs to him. Then comes the actual offerings. 10% of the brutto, not the netto. The gross income. not the net. After you paid everything, you make 5,000, they take away 30%, you got left with 2,000, and then you give God 200. That's not, no. But that's what most of you do, because you don't love. And that's the truth of it. See, I made some muffins the other day. They were very good. I didn't really want to give them away. I liked them so much. But I did. Why? Because it has to cost me something. Because I want to follow the Lord, and it means living a life of sacrifice. I had a couple of them, don't worry, I had a few, but when it came down to it, I had a bunch of them left, and I decided I'm not going to eat anymore. I'm going to give them away. Because there's a greater value in sacrifice than in hoarding, because that's what God is. The Lord did not hold on to His Spirit, did not hold on to His life. He gave it away freely. He said, "Come, all who are thirsty, come, drink, for free, no cost, free of charge, come. All who are willing, come." Salvation is a gift, did not cost you anything, because He is benevolent and self-sacrificial. He is love. Now, salvation did come for free, but then He says, well, now do as I do. Now that you're in the club, now that you get it, I want you to get yourself together and start acting right. And that means do as I do. Yeshua said that. Live as I lived. Follow me. Pick up your execution stake. Deny yourself daily. That's everything I've been telling you. Deny yourself daily to live a life of sacrifice. Don't do what you want. Don't be extravagant and spoiling yourself, fattening up yourself. Live a life of sacrifice. Sure, you need to eat. Don't muzzle the ox. But you don't have to eat steak every night, do you? You don't have to spend $2,000 a month on burgers, giving the prophets of God $200 a month. They have to eat too. The Kohanim, the Levites, that's their job. That's their full-time occupation. The ministry of God. It's not that the Lord needs your money, but He's allowing you to give a contribution to see where your heart is. And not just to the men of God, you got the poor people, the widows, the orphans, the people out in the street. We're surrounded by people. I'm not just giving muffins to homeless people. I'm giving muffins and cakes and to old people, to sick people, to, someone come out of the hospital, bake a cake for them. I'm not going to charge them for it, obviously. I'm going to put the time, get the ingredients. Someone is sick, make something for them. Make a soup for them. Get out of your way. It doesn't have to be comfortable. Don't say, oh, I wish, but no. It's supposed to cost you. If it doesn't cost you, you've given them nothing. Don't you get it? You can't give God something you got with a gift card. It has to cost you because life is sacrifice. Love is sacrifice. Get it in your head and follow the Lord. He set the path. All you have to do is follow.